Hey there, fellow Cashflow hustlers. This is your host, Justin Grimes. I appreciate you tuning into the show today as we explore actionable tips and tricks to optimize cash flow in your business and in your life. With us today is Dan Handford. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you, or glad to be here.
Yeah. Good to see you. A habit. I know you got your own podcast going, so
yeah,
we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute.
Sure.
You mind telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're up to these days?
Sure. So I always say when people ask me that, it's a loaded question, and people, I don't really have like an elevator pitch of as far as like what I do, because there's so many different things that I'm doing right now, which, I think is good for the listeners to hear, because it kind of fits in line with your show, which is the cash flow hustle. So my background originally was, when I first got out of high school, I didn't want to go to college and kind of resisted that. Started my own business, didn't go so well. Had a partner in that one. He got into drugs. We fell out of that business. Then I started a company where we did web design, web hosting, and networking. And then from there, I actually started to work on an associate's degree in programming and computer programming, and specifically for web design type stuff. And then I met a chiropractor and started to fall in love with chiropractic. So I went back to change my associates to a bachelor's of science in biology to the University of South Carolina. Finished that, went to chiropractic school, finished that, and while I was in chiropractic school, started two online businesses, which we'll get into details about those a little bit later too. And then from there, I modified my chiropractic office into being medical only, which I can go into some details about that as we go forward as well. And we now have 5 medical offices located around South Carolina. And we also still have those 2 online businesses that continue to produce income for us that I started when I was in college. And it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to get rid of those things, which again, we can kind of go into some details about that too. But right now, my focus is on our podcast, which we just launched beginning of June, which is the Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs podcast. And we also have our real estate business called Handford Capital. And we raise money for various acquisitions of large multifamily or apartment complexes for people who are higher net worth individuals that want to offset their income with some really good depreciation on some assets and various things like that. So that's kind of in a nutshell from when I graduated high school on. There's a whole other story behind that as well, as far as before I got into that before high school. But so I always say I've been an entrepreneur since a little baby. When I was born, I was negotiating with the doctor which side of the cheek I was going to be smacked on. So I've always kind of had that entrepreneur bit to me.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about in your first business, I guess, starting out in college. How'd you pick the partner in that particular instance? It's just a buddy that had some combination.
Yeah, it's funny because neither one of us had money, but his mom did. So we were really good friends, at the time. And I think that's where, a lot of people get into business with people is, I'm really good friends with this person. We got this great idea that we came up together. Let's go into business. And when I did that, it was a weight loss company. Actually, it was a supplement back in the day when you could sell ephedra. And so we had this all natural supplement that, people could use to lose weight. And we bought our first batch of supplements and product from, the funds that his mom gave to us. And it just, the product sold, but then when my partner started to get into drugs and, using the money for the business to pay for that habit, it kind of hurt things a little bit. And so I decided to, part ways with that. And then I actually started my own company called Virtuoso Web Services, which is no longer in existence today, because I closed it down to move into the chiropractic space.
Okay. And then so you went to school for chiropractic school and out of that was born a business. So let's kind of dive a little bit into how you got the idea.
Yeah. So, when you're in chiropractic school, I didn't really a lot of the students I don't know if they wanted to, but they had to get an hourly or salary paid job. Most of them, of course, it was hourly because they were a full-time student, but, they go work at a grocery store or, a restaurant, be a waiter or waitress or a bar, or, maybe they'd go to a mall and work in there. They'd have to work some sort of, trading time for dollars type job. And I knew I didn't want to do that because that just wasn't who I was. Now, prior to that, before I went into chiropractic, I was working for my wife's uncle, who at the time she was still my wife's, he was still my wife's uncle, but obviously wasn't my uncle at that time by marriage. But, his name is Dr. Popwell, and it literally, he's a chiropractor, and that really is his name. He didn't change it for that. It's a great name for a chiropractor. But when I met him, I started to work for him. So I worked for him for 4 years and pretty much ran his entire office for the most part. I did all the insurance billing and collections. I did, front desk. Almost every position in the office I did except for being the chiropractor. And so I kind of had all the business stuff before I went in. So when I went into chiropractic school, I knew I didn't really want to work for somebody else. I wanted to be able to do some things on my own, but I didn't know what that was going to be. Well, after the first quarter of chiropractic school, we all needed to have a spine model. And those spine models are what the students use to be able to learn the anatomy. They need to know that whatever they're putting their hands on, whatever they're adjusting, is the bone that they're actually touching. And so we all had to have a spine model. Well, in the bookstore of the college there, of the university, they had a spine model there that they were selling it for $185. And so I looked at that and I was like, okay, $185. And then, of course, talked to several of my friends and students and stuff like that were there. And they were like, man, that is just way too expensive. And so I was like, I wonder if I can find the manufacturer or distributor of this product. And so I found a distributor of the exact same spine model that was in the bookstore, and they were selling it for $89.95. And so I decided to call them up and say, hey, if I can get an order of 20 or 30 of these, would you be able to discount them for me? And if so, how much? And so I called them up, which now, fast forward, they're my biggest competitor. So we're kind of always neck and neck now as far as competition, but which is kind of cool to kind of see full circle how all that stuff works out. But, I never placed an order with them and I'll finish that story here quickly. So when I called them up, they said, well, we can give you that spine for $65, including shipping. And I was like, sweet. Well, I'll sell it to the students for $70, but 70 always sounds too much. So I'll say $69.95. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't have like any IOUs or, hold me one or order me one, and I get stuck with all the product because at the time I didn't have any money, And so I put these order forms together and I connected it to a PayPal account. So if they wanted to pay with a credit card, they can pay with a PayPal account, or they could pay me with cash or check and fill out the form. And each quarter in chiropractic college, there is a new set of students that come in. So we actually do what are called quarters. So every 3 months, there's a new set of students that are coming into the program, and usually between about 100 and 120 students. And so what we did what I did was I got in front of each one of those classrooms and announced that I was selling these spine models and passed out the forms to everybody. And within the first week, I had sold 80 spine models with money and cash up front and in hand. And I was like totally excited about this, man, because I'm sitting here going $5 times 80. That's a lot of money. I could do this for a while and make some good money, and I don't have to work. And of course, I look back at that and I go, that really wasn't a lot of money at all. But it was a good start, and it was basically just a couple $100. So what I did is I was like, I wonder at that time before I placed the order, I was like, I wonder, because I was going through the distributor, the middleman. And I was like, I wonder if I could figure out who the manufacturer is of this product. And so I had the distributor, I ordered one of them. So I did spend some money from them. And I had them send it to me so I could look at it and approve it, if you will, to make sure it was the right one. And so when I did that, they sent me the model, and I found the name of the manufacturer of the product. So I was like, I got 80 of these orders. Let me see if I can get it any cheaper than $65. And so I found the manufacturer. I called them up, and they were like, you have an order of 80 of these things? I'm like, yeah, I got cash up front in hand. I'm ready to go. And they're like, well, how many times a year do you think you could do this? And I'm like, well, we have students that come in there, 4 times a year. So, four times a year. And they were like, well, you know what? I'm going to put you on our highest dealer discount, because that'll put you at that high tier discount for being able to get the highest discount on all of our products, not just the spine model. So it opened me up to be able to sell over 2,000 more products, and it was all drop ship. And so I didn't have to touch the product at all. I just, did a couple of things, and I'll tell you how I did it after I finished this. But so they told me, and I will never forget this. They told me, they said, well, we will sell you that exact same spine model for $42.48, and that'll include the shipping. And I was, of course, completely baffled, completely excited about that, man. Talk about cash flow, man. That was a nice infusion of cash flow, because now instead of just making $5 per spine, you can do the math and figure out, instead of just making a couple $100, we made several $1,000s. And so over the next 2 weeks, I sold another 40 spines. And the funny thing is all of those had to be shipped to one location in order to get that kind of a price. And so I kind of did something. I look back and I go, I probably shouldn't have done it that way, but it got me to be able to place that order. But I basically shipped it to the school. And so they have these, 2 or 3 docks that trucks will back up to. And I shipped it to the school. And then like a day before they were supposed to arrive, like they'd already been shipped, I called up the packing, the packing manager, and I was like, "Hey, I just want you to know that I shipped some product to the dock there." And I did tell like it's gonna be like literally it was 4 pallets of 80 spines, like huge, we're talking, 12, 13 foot high, 42 by 48 pallets, 4 of them being backed into this thing. And the nice thing is that I had all the technology set up that, every single one of the students that ordered got a text message and an email the moment it hit that dock. And within 1 hour, every single one of those spines was picked up. Wow. So it was really cool to kind of see that. So I didn't get into any trouble that time. But I did try it one more time. And then I got called into the student director's office and was told I couldn't do that anymore. But I think it was mainly because the bookstore caught on that I was selling their exact spine model for cheaper. And they weren't making any money selling spines anymore.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so that's kind of the story behind, that particular business. And from there, that business continues to produce every single, day, really, because, we've had that now since 2007 is when I started that business. And once I got open to sell all 2,000 of those products, and I started selling them on eBay to figure out, I wonder if I could just throw a couple products up there and see if these things will sell. And they started to sell, started to make a little bit of money. And then I was like, I know how to build a website. I know how to, connect that kind of stuff up. So the next month I was like, I'm going to go ahead and put a website together, started to create the database and launch some Google AdWords campaigns to push traffic to that website. And then month after month, it just started to build and build and build. And we're doing, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month. And I'm sitting here in chiropractic school going, why am I still here? But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I continued to do that. But it was kind of funny because in between classes, we might have like a 2-hour lecture. Well, in between it, we'd have like these, 15, 20-minute breaks to go to the bathroom, chat it up in the hallway, just fart around and do nothing. And I wasn't that kind of guy. Like I'm the guy that I tried to get there early so I could park close to the building. And then that way in between classes or during those breaks, I would jump out to my car and start doing work. I had a SUV at the time, a little Ford Escape, or I think it might have been a Lincoln Mercury. Not a Lincoln, it was a Mercury Mariner SUV, which is very similar to the Ford Escape. And I put a laptop stand in the passenger side so my laptop could sit right there. And I had a headset, and I was in between classes. I would go to my SUV, put my headset on, and start making phone calls, calling customers. Doing because there's definitely customer service stuff that you have to handle. And responding to emails and all this kind of stuff. And so I was definitely hustling it in between classes and all that kind of stuff. Awesome. And so it was a lot of fun to be able to build that business. And then from there, I built another business that was all passive as well called Portable Chiro, where I sold portable chiropractic tables. So the first business sells, spines, but also sells, now the spines are probably maybe less than 5% of what we sell. We sell more, skeletons and brains and hearts and eyes and ears and nose and lungs and, torsos. I mean, we sell all these plastic educational models to people all across the country. Awesome. And all across the world,
Yeah.
And then we have this portable chiro company where we sell portable chiropractic tables because, again, there was a need, and I was able to solve that problem by sourcing the product directly and being able to get them a better price on that table. And people started ordering from me and was selling a ton of chiropractic tables. And we still have both of those businesses today that continue to produce 7 figures a year for us. I only have one person right now that runs both of those.
Really? Wow. Mm-hmm. I was going to get into that, and we'll circle back. Kind of the ultimate, I wish I had done that moment maybe for some of your classmates. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So he took advantage of the opportunity.
Well, and they all loved it because they were saving a ton of money.
I'm sure.
I mean, they were like, yeah, he's making some money, I'm sure. But I mean,
I'm saving a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
He solved a great need. Let's talk a little bit about how you balance. This sounds like, so you got those 2 businesses. You talked a little bit about automation. I know you're big on team building and, things like that. So how do you run and juggle all these different things? You got the podcast, you got businesses, you're raising capital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would say that the biggest thing is that I'm I'm fairly good at being able to build a business from scratch, because every single one of my businesses I've built from scratch. I was on an interview the other day and somebody said, can you give me some information on how you can buy a business? I'm like, honestly, I can't give you any authoritative advice on that because I've never done it. I've had my businesses valuated before, but I've never sold one and I've never bought one. And so I've always been a from scratch type person to kind of build it up from scratch. And so I would say the biggest thing that my strength is being able to, find a business, build it out, and be in that business until I get it comfortable enough, and then find somebody to then hire them to be able to run that so I can go off and do the next thing. Right. And so that's really, right now my focuses are the real estate and the podcast, because I'm in those right now every day. That's what I'm doing. I'm raising money for various, projects, and capital, using my own money as well as other investors' money. And then I'm also running the podcast and managing that piece of it as well. Now, there'll be a point, and eventually that I will get to the point where, I might not have to do that anymore. I'll go to the next business. But right now, even with the medical practices, I was in those. That one took me the longest. It took me from 2010 to 2000, this year, 2018, to really get that to the point where I had a solid team in place so that I could trust them to run the business with me not even being there. I mean, I haven't stepped foot in any of my clinics to actually do anything in the clinics. I stepped foot into one of them the other day just to, even though we don't do medical in those offices anymore, we still have a chiropractic table. So I got an adjustment from one of my associates. But I haven't stepped into any of those practices since February of this year. Awesome. And they're continuing to produce for me, but I had to make sure I had the right people in place. Like the person that I put in to run that worked for me for 3.5 years before I could trust them to really take it over. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing in any business is mindset. I had to really change my mind on making sure that I could start to delegate things, because when I was doing everything, I could do it all, and I made more money that way because I didn't have to pay anybody else, but I couldn't go on to the next thing. I couldn't expand. I couldn't grow. And so I had to change my mind to be able to hire somebody to take over, to do some of the lower level tasks that I didn't have to do anymore. Right. And so that's the biggest thing with all the businesses that I have, is that I try to stage them to the point where I can put somebody in place, and then I can step out and just become the general of that business.
Talking about mindset, what would you say are some of the tools or techniques that you've used to get that kind of molded to where you could take that next step and actually delegate and take your hands off?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me is there's two things that come to my mind. Number one is I'm a seminar junkie. So I love going to seminars. I'll go to seminars, and sometimes, a lot of the content might be rehashed or I've heard it over again because I'll go to so many seminars. But I always tell myself, if I can walk away from one thing that I call the golden nugget out of that event, it can transform my life, transform my businesses, and transform the bottom line. And so I can't think of one seminar I've been to that I didn't meet somebody or I didn't learn something that really transformed my thinking, but also transformed something that I did in my business. It's kind of a running joke in our businesses because, whenever I go to a seminar and I come back and we have a meeting, my staff is like, oh, great, what are we doing now? What are we going to change now? So, it's always one of those kind of things that I'm always going to seminars, always continually learning. I'm always reading books. I'm reading things all the time. And I would say the second thing, which I would say is probably the most important, even above the seminars, is I have a friend of mine down in Florida that has clinics that are very similar to mine. And since 2013, so it's been about 5 years now, we have been meeting at least 3 or 4 times a year as a mastermind together. It's just 2 of us. So, some people think you have to have a mastermind of, 10, 15, 20 people. And, we actually tried to bring other people into the mastermind with us. And what we found is that we were being the teacher more than it was a mastermind. And so we were just basically giving advice from people in the front of the room. And it wasn't really like we were trying to. It was like somebody would go up in the front of the room and they talk about their problem in the mastermind, and nobody would say anything. So we're kind of feeling awkward. So both of us are chiming in, trying to help him out and stuff like that. And him and I were the leaders of the group. And that's why they would look to us for that advice. And that's not how a mastermind should work. The mastermind should be everybody collectively working together. And so I finally, we did that twice. And then finally after that, I called him up and I'm like, listen, I honestly, I said, this might sound weird, but honestly, I get more value from you than anybody else. And so would you mind just you and I having these masterminds? And he goes, you know what? I was thinking the exact same thing. He goes, you and I, so we basically just get together. And it's kind of, again, it's kind of funny in our businesses because even my CEO of my medical practices now, he makes fun of us that we have a bunch of mandates, we'll go and, rent out a weekend hotel at a Ritz-Carlton, just mastermind all weekend long. And, we go to lunch and breakfast and dinner together and everything and go to the beach. But we're masterminding. We're taking time to work on the business and not always working in the business. And so it's one of those things that I would say it's the key thing that, has really, skyrocketed my success in multiple areas.
Awesome. Yeah. I've heard that many times. It's, I think, easier said than done. So kudos to you for actually executing.
You got to find that right person. That's the biggest thing. You got to find the right person. And, him and I have very similar, religious beliefs and political views. And, we have very small children. He has 3, I have 4, but they're all under, 7, 8 years old. And our wives get along, and so we also try to do once a year we'll get together as a family and stuff like that. And so awesome. It's true. You got to find somebody that you can really do that with. But the way you start is you go to masterminds. You pay that extra money. You go to some of these masterminds. You meet people because you're not going to find somebody if you're not out there. You got to find somebody. You know how I met him? I met him because I put on an event myself in Charlotte. And it was a marketing event for chiropractors. And he had a coaching program that he sold to chiropractors on personal injury. And so I called him up one day and I said, hey, would you mind being a speaker in my event? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'd be glad to. I never turned down an offer like that. He shows up at the event. We hit it off really well. And the rest is the history.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's outstanding. You tee those things up nicely. I guess I'm trying to think of what the saying is, but, what is it? Luck is where opportunity meets. Does that ring a bell?
Nope. I mean, it's starting to sound good, but I don't know how to finish it for you.
You're putting yourself where, some people from the outside in may say, man, Dan's so lucky. Look at all these things he's doing. But what you're doing is taking advantage of opportunities, putting yourself in those situations. And then when it's right in front of you,
I think cash flow hustle has nothing to do with luck. I mean, there is no luck that I've had at all. I mean, mine is just being there when an opportunity arose and being cognizant of that opportunity and having an audience that I can solve that problem for. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, this podcast is hustle it, man. I mean, working your butt off not 9 to 5, but 9 to 9, 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock in the night to the 9 o'clock in the morning, like 24/7.
Right.
There's been many times where I've been up till, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and, only had 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And what's funny is when I do that and I know it's the right thing that I'm doing, I don't feel tired. I feel invigorated more. Right. And it's hard for me to go to sleep, and you just gotta always be aware of your surroundings. And I would say the biggest takeaway that your listeners can have from that situation, from starting that business in the chiropractic college and selling those spines is you have to make sure that when you create a product or a service, or you have a product or a service, that you have an audience. That because a lot of times, we get so passionate about a product or an idea or a service. And a lot of this is a lot of times in the technology space. People create an app or they create a software or program, and they've spent, hundreds of thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of lines of code to build this thing. And they get their emotions caught up in it. And then they failed to do one thing, which is making sure that there is an audience to sell it to. You can't, now I'm not saying that there's not unicorns out there, because there are unicorns out there that, people have created a product and there was no audience, and then they created an audience, or they were able to change the mindset of the audience to be able to sell the product. But that's very, very rare and very hard to do. It's always best to have an audience and then create a product once you know what the problem is in that audience. And that's exactly what I did is I was in chiropractic school. The problem was what? There's a spine model. It's way too expensive. Let me see if I can solve that problem for them. And I went and solved that problem. And that's why I did well with that. And that's why it opened me up to do even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Important first step. Yeah. There's a lot of shiny objects out there, but ultimately if you don't have the consumer to support and purchase we are all, I think we are all as entrepreneurs,
sometimes, taken by those, shiny object syndromes. I've done it myself. I mean, almost everybody who's an entrepreneur has probably bought a program, whether it be training or coaching or whatever it is, didn't even crack the binder on the thing and just stuck it on their shelf and didn't even look at it. I mean, we've all done that. And same thing, like going to seminars. You go to seminars and everybody's like feverishly writing down their notes. What do people do when they get back from those seminars? They throw it in their desk and they never see it again. I mean, There's no, they say it's because it solidifies your thinking process. Well, one of the things that, people are asking me, well, how did you get through chiropractic school running this business? Because you were working the whole time in between hours and stuff. So when did you find time to study? Well, I practice the same technique in my seminars that I go to that I did in chiropractic school. I didn't want to have to study that much when I was done in chiropractic school. And so what I did is I made sure that I sat in the front of the classroom. I was in the first 2 or 3 rows usually, and I was the one raising my hand, asking questions throughout, but I was what I call actively engaging myself in that classroom. And if I could actively engage myself instead of sitting in the back on Facebook and Twitter and doing all this kind of, just playing around and putzing around, I wouldn't have to spend as much time after class actually studying. Mm-hmm. And so I would go to the classrooms, actively engage myself. And guess what? The teacher's the one testing you. So don't you think you should pay attention to the teacher, because they're going to be the ones that test you. So if you pay attention to them during class and actively engage, you'll know exactly what's going to be on the test. And that's exactly what I did. And I do the same thing when I go into seminars. I don't ever take notes. I mean, unless there's something really, really high level that I really want to remember, I rarely ever take notes. I'm usually sitting in there in the back. I usually sit in the back on those because I'm not trying to, study or anything like that or learn be in front. But I'll still raise my hand. I'll still ask questions. A lot of times I'll stand up in the back, but I'm never taking notes. But I'm actively engaging myself in that seminar, and that's how you can take the most out of those seminars that you attend.
Yeah, that's good advice. I've taken a lot of notes. And
here's the thing is I always say that when you're sitting there taking notes, guess what? They're still talking, so you're missing some stuff.
Right.
So yeah. I don't ever want to miss something, so I'm like, I'm not going to take notes. I'd rather record and listen to it again.
Yeah, the things I remember most from those seminars, thinking back on it, to your point, is those things that I didn't write down.
Yeah.
So that never thought of it that way, but I'll remember that next time I go to one.
Yeah. Forget those notes, man.
Yeah, absolutely. An important part, in my opinion, of entrepreneurship and just life in general is setting goals. Do you mind sharing maybe 1 or 2 goals that you're actively pursuing right now?
Sure. So I honestly, I really am not the best goal setting person. I set vision goals. Like I know where I want to take things and I know where I want things to go. And so my vision I'll tell you kind of what my vision is. And that's kind of how I kind of, pace my goals, if you will. Mm-hmm. My vision for my podcast is that I can reach people across the entire world and help them understand how to make better decisions as an entrepreneur. And that's why the whole podcast is called Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs. We're interviewing high-level, entrepreneurs, and that way we can talk to them about what are some of the tough decisions that they had to make along their journey of being an entrepreneur and has made them successful. And we've had some pretty interesting stories come from people that, have never opened up before about these things. But we want to talk to them about 2 things. One is a tough decision that they made that that didn't go so well. They made the decision, things didn't go so hot, whether they lost a ton of money, what are the lessons that they learned through that? And then of course, the other side of that we always try to get is, what about a tough decision that was made that was really positive, the kind of uplifting and stuff like that, and some of the lessons they learned through that. So being able to create that the audience for that podcast, my goal is to monetize the podcast for sure by, getting some sponsors to be able to sponsor the podcast. And then also speak. I am not the best person when it comes to, I say not the best, but I'm not, I don't like coaching one-on-one. There's various reasons and nuances why, and I might get back into doing some of that and just be very selective on who who hires me. But I'm not in it right now a lot for the money. I mean, obviously the money will be nice. It's always going to be nice to have extra cash flow, if you will. Mm-hmm. But for that, for the podcast, I'm really trying to, create an audience, and it's going to be a long haul. I mean, it's not going to be, even in the green room, we were talking a little bit about, how long is it going to take, to get you able to monetize it. And it's not one of those things that you just have to go, and 2 months in or 3 months in, I'm making a bunch of money. It's going to be it's a long haul thing. It might be 2 or 3 years before you really hit it really big and really heavy, but it's consistency that really is the key there. And then of course with Handford Capital, Our goal there is to be able to, expand and increase our reach and be able to reach outside, investors to be able to bring into our company to be able to invest in some of our multifamily apartment complexes that we're purchasing. And we are primarily a capital raising partner, so we don't usually try to find the deals, obviously, because I'm really busy doing the podcast. But we find sponsors for these deals, which are the people who actually put the deal together, and we bring them into our company as a partner, if you will. Not really a partner of our company, but we partner together to raise money for these different assets and for these different deals. And so that's what they call multifamily syndication. And so our goal there is to try to help people that are high net worth individuals, because one of the things that I found as I've written many six-figure checks to the government, which I do not like doing, every time I have to write those checks, I have commas in them to the government. I don't like it. So I never really realized how powerful multifamily, real estate was from a passive investor standpoint, where you can actually put money into one of these real estate deals, and then at the end of the year, after you've been cash flowing off the property month after month after month, show a loss because of the depreciation on that asset, and it can offset the ordinary income that you have from your other gains that you have. And so it's really powerful how you can make money, save money, and reduce your taxable liability from these, and do it from a passive standpoint. And so my goal from my standpoint is to be able to find some of these outside investors that have that same problem and help them solve that problem. So, and of course, with the podcast, we'll reach those higher net worth individuals and various things like that. But, the goal here is to really, focus on the Handford capital, raising money for multifamily deals. We have a couple of deals going on right now, closing one next week. It's a $15.5 million deal in Houston, Texas. Have another one coming down the pike in the end of August in Atlanta. It's about a $12 or $13 million deal. We have a deal we did last month, and it was a portfolio deal in North Arlington, Texas, $54 million or $52 million deal there. So there's a lot of things that are in the works that we're doing. The nice thing is a lot of people that are in my position don't know about this stuff. They look at that and they go, well, I couldn't buy a $15.5 million property, and neither could I. I don't have that kind of money just to write a check for $15.5 million to buy that property. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about pooling investor money into a deal, spending, $50,000 to $100,000 per investment if you want, or maybe if you want to put $300,000 or $400,000, whatever it is, and being able to be a limited partner in some of these deals and not have the liability except for the money that you put in. So that's really my current focus, the podcast as well as the Handford Capital right now.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a powerful tool, I think, on that accelerated depreciation and stuff like that. That is
I wish I would have known that sooner, because obviously I've had people come up to me like, oh, are you putting, my CPA asks me all the time, are you putting money into in an IRA and stuff like that? I'm like, well, how much money am I going to make in an IRA? And they're like, are you going to make at least probably 5 to 7% a year? I'm like, I could put that same money into one of my businesses and like double or triple it. So why would I put it in there?
Yeah, if you want to pull it out for your 65, don't worry, penalty.
Exactly. So, Yep, exactly. But, people that do have IRAs are able to convert that to a self-directed IRA now and be able to invest that money self-directed into some of these real estate deals, to, instead of getting, 5 to 7% on some of this IRA stuff, the projections that we're seeing, a lot of these are, 16 to 18% IRRs, as well as like a 2 to 2.1 multiple on the equity that you're putting in on a 5-year hold. So you're talking a good 15, 20%, annualized return when you look at it versus, just 5 to 7% on an IRA, depending on how well the IRA does.
Yeah, it's tough to beat.
Yep.
All collateralized by physical asset and real estate. So yeah, pretty sweet.
That's the thing too, is you talk about collateralized on the real estate. Back in 2008 when the market crashed, where did everybody go?
Yeah,
they went to apartments, man. They rented apartments because they couldn't buy houses anymore. So even right now, we're in 2018 right now, and I know I'm dating this a little bit, but that's okay. We're in July 2018. We are. Everybody is talking about a correction of some sort, right? Well, you know what? I'm not worried about it that much, because I know when there's a correction, guess what people can't buy? Houses. They can't buy those things, because what are they going to do? They're going to go into an apartment complex. And so as the apartment complexes fill up, the rates will keep on going up as well. And there might be some sort of a dip in the apartment industry somehow, but it won't be as dramatic as it will be in other areas.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. All right. You ready for the rapid hustle round?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, man. What is your favorite resource, book, or podcast that you found useful on your cash flow hustle journey?
Sure. So I would say that recently, the one that has really transformed some of my mindset and my thinking about, not just always thinking, small, and thinking really, really big is, the Grant Cardone book, The 10X Rule. And it was kind of interesting because I was at an event in not Puerto Rico, in the Dominican Republic. And I was at that retreat. It was a retreat of a mastermind. There was like 5 or 6 people there. And one of the guys there gave us all books from Grant Cardone. It was the Sell or Be Sold. And I read that book and I was like, this is terrible. I don't really like this book at all. Like it just didn't jive with me. And I don't know what it was, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to get another one of this guy's books because it sounded like he knew what he was talking about and it sounded like he had some good information. And so I bought his other book, the 10X Rule. And I listened to the Audible version of it. And if your listeners are on his, I would suggest listening to the Audible version of that book because he ad-libs some of that stuff in there. And it's just absolutely funny and hilarious. And it sounds so much better when it comes from him and his voice. Right. It's very hard to get the tone, but most people either hate or love Grant Cardone. I'm kind of in the middle, I've been to several of his events, went to the 10X Growth Con that he had, the second one that he had back in Las Vegas. And that really helped to transform, some of my mindset and my thinking. So I would say at the very least, follow him and get some of the mindset things that he teaches on and ignore the rest of it if you don't like it.
Yeah, fair enough. Good stuff. If you could give yourself one piece of advice back when you were younger, just starting out, what would it be?
Wow. I would probably say that the biggest advice that I would give myself would be to connect with more people and be out there more than I was. Because in my earlier days, it was probably because of a cash flow issue that I didn't have the finances and the money to be able to travel and to get out there to go to seminars and be in front of people. But, my biggest thing that I would say is that, you've heard other people say this, but your net worth is in your network. And so until you can start to expand your network, it's very hard to expand your net worth. And so I would say trying to get out there and be in front of more people, talking to more people, being in places. And the hard thing is people always say, surround yourself with 5 people. You are who you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most. And so try to surround yourself with people that are better than you. And I heard I heard Ty Lopez actually say this one time. He said, the problem with that phrase is that the 5 people that I want to be with don't want to be around me because they want to be around people that are better than them, right? And so it's this vicious cycle. But I would say find a really good mentor or coach, because there is a difference between the two, and surround yourself with those people that have been down the road, have done things better than you, and be with those people. And again, get into a mastermind.
Okay. Awesome. Good advice. Finally, how can the Cashflow Hustlers get in touch with you?
They can look me up in a couple of different ways. I'm all over Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram on Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs podcast. And you can also look us up if you're interested in some of the real estate investing and trying to do some of that stuff. You can look us up at handfordcapital.com. But we're always looking for entrepreneurs to come on our podcast. So if you're listening and you want to join us, go to toughdecisions.net. That's toughdecisions.net, and you can give us an email on there. Look us up, and we'd love to have you as part of our audience.
Yeah, awesome, good stuff. Yeah, I appreciate the work you guys are doing. I think the topics that y'all are discussing are very helpful for myself and life and business. So, good work, man. Keep it up.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate all your support as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's all I got for today. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time, and we're going to keep in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Dan.
All right,
man.
Bye-bye.